And hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Brunel. This is History Pitch, and I think we're at number 14. Is that right? Yeah, 14. And today is the 28th day of February, and I would like to wish my brother a very happy birthday. I just spoke to him on the phone, and I said I might call him live on air, and he laughed. So that was good. Thank you very much. Technical. Oh, we've got to stop the technical issues going on here. Stop this playing. So let's work out what happened today in history. I have in the studio Josie, Matthew Seligman, who is going to be telling us about his family history. Matthew's one of the department members in the history department at Brunel, and Claire Kelly. Claire Kelly made a special guest star appearance in our ghost episode. So what happened today in history, Claire?
Not a lot, really. It's quite a rubbish day in history. Only a few interesting things happened. For example, in 1692, the Salem witch hunt began.
Yes.
It started off with a woman called Tituba, who was thought to have possessed a few girls, and she admitted to it, even though who knows if she did or not. And it just started a massive witch hunt. Salem village against Salem town. There's lots of...
Claire is going off-piste here with her own knowledge. This is excellent. Yes, and you've all seen the play?
No.
Have you not seen the play?
Seen the
Crucible.
The Crucible. Oh, that was Matthew Seligman. Excellent. Hello, Matthew.
Good morning.
Good morning. So the Salem witch hunts begin. What else happens?
Well, yesterday was the Reichstag fire.
Yes. Which means this morning is the 60th anniversary of the clean-up of the Reichstag fire. Hi, Devinda. What else have we got?
Nothing that interesting, to be honest. A lot of ice skating.
We do have a lot of... Okay, let's go through the underwhelming events that happened today in history. Where is all this ice skating crap? Stuff happens, doesn't it? Like Ford wins the Colorado Springs Classic ice skating competition. Hitler disallows the Communist Party. What else did we find?
Let's not forget prosecution for sleeping in mass.
Oh, yes. We arrived today, which reminds me, we arrived in the studio not 15 minutes ago to find a man sleeping in the studio, which was a little bit of a shock. There's his socks. Can you see his socks? Yeah, that's the man's socks. Anyway, Josie kicked him out, and here we are. There's a bit of his saliva on the floor under here. It's a bit gross. But a man in what was it, Matthew?
Oh, it was in the 40s or 50s? Shall we scroll back?
Where he was prosecuted in Massachusetts, we think, for sleeping in a church.
1646.
Yeah, that's pretty early on in the colony of Massachusetts. So, as we find some more underwhelming events in history, let's recap. Ben the Boaties arrived. Yo, salutations. So we have a very exciting lineup. We have Matthew Seligman talking about family history. We have LGBT History Month, number 3. We have Tavinda with a beard /or babe. Ben the Boatie is going to be doing some anthropology freestyling. Claire Kelly is here. And we have me talking about the history of emotions with Simon, which may yet be our best episode ever. And Erica Hanna on Bristol. So have you scored anything else there, Claire?
Not really, no.
No, underwhelming day in history. Well, let us proceed forthwith, as we normally do, to see what Erica has to say to us. Erica, can you hear me?
Erica. Tamsin, what's going on?
I'm excited.
Why are you excited, Tamsin?
Because you were taking me to Bristol at the weekend.
I know, we're going on a little mini break together.
We are, and we must just tell Ethel that no, despite the fact that the Hotel Divan Bristol wanted to inquire whether we wanted a twin bed or a double bed today, we are not in a relationship, are we, sadly?
What, so we're in a twin bed?
No, yeah, we're in twin beds.
Oh, I know I shouldn't use you like this, but no snuggles at all?
After last time. Okay, enough. Ethel doesn't need to hear this. But I have been to Bristol a couple of times, and
yeah.
To be honest, they've both been a bit miserable, mostly on account of the weather.
Right.
So I'm hoping that you're going to open up a whole new lens on this city.
Yeah.
What are going to be the highlights?
Okay, I'm expected to do a tour guide thing. And first of all, Tamsin, I'd like to say that I really hope this is the beginning of a really beautiful Tamsin mini series, because I feel like I need more mini breaks in my life.
And I'm stuck on island lockdown, so that is a perfect combination.
Exactly. Basically, oh my God, can you hear this? This is my parents trying to phone me. I went to university in Bristol, which was fantastic, and I was basically just one of those sort of slightly dim posh people who just really spent 3 years going out clubbing, and that was really, really good. And so I've got very, very happy associations with my time in Bristol. And I was there for 5 years because I ended up staying doing the MA and things. So it's like my happy place. And really, this is why we're going to Bristol on holiday. But also, Bristol's a lot of other interesting associations maybe we can unpack. I'll start briefly, like, society, in the 1950s, for example, it's the size of massive West Indian migration to Britain, actually following the lines of previous trade routes. And there's a massive West Indian population. It's the site, because of this, of St. Paul's riots in 1982. This was quite an, this is when a cafe that basically sold dope was locked down, and as part of this, the Mopside riots, the Toxteth riots, a great wave of this sort of inner city 80s race riots. So that's interesting. What's happened recently is you get this really, really interesting sort of counter-gentrification in the Bristol city centre, and that's, as an urban historian, why I'm interested in it.
Hang on. What is counter-gentrification?
Well, okay. Instead, so gentrification happens for a number of reasons that have been theorised to death. But basically when middle-class white professionals move back into the inner city to capitalise on low rents and increase cultural capital of restoring houses, right? But this forces out people who already live there. So what's going on in the Stokes Croft area of Bristol is that people who've lived there a long time are really, really fighting back against gentrification in quite a weird way. They've reclaimed all the post boxes and all the bins and painted them yellow, and all the street signs and things. They've taken the visible tappings of the state and sort of imposed their own identity on it.
Oh, this is brilliant. It's like taking Patrick Joyce as a Bible and going, okay, let's contest public street lighting and post boxes and meat markets. What else does he have?
Exactly. So all the iconography of the state in your daily life has actually been reclaimed by the local groups in this one area of Bristol. And so there's an awful lot of neighbourhood stuff. So it's not only the iconography of the state, but things like access to welfare. There's a lot of community groups and things that are really, really active. And to an extent, this really is authentic, and the long-standing community of St. Paul, of Stokes Croft, to an extent, it's a more recent wave of people living there who are really, really quite explicitly political. I'm not very sure. But it's a really, really interesting place to walk around. So that's one thing we're going to do on our tour as well.
Defo. Can we do a little bit of global history? So we have to go up and see the top of Clifton where all the ships, you could see the ships sailing in, and the big houses built by slave money, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You can tell us about this, right? Bristol's a massive imperial and slave port, right?
Oh, and we must not forget, because after all, we are on Brunel Radio, that Bristol is in many ways an iconic city for Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Oh my God, do you want to know something funny about this? When I was an engineering student, which I was for a while...
hang on, listeners, let us highlight this particular fact. In Erica's former life, she was an engineering student.
Exactly. That's it's like teleologies. You cannot think through Erica's life as a narrative of progress, because there's these cul-de-sacs, like my career as an engineer. But when I was an engineering student, we had to do a project where we all had to pick an engineer and almost do sort of a polstering, an electioneering about voting about who is the best civil engineer of all time. Apart from, none of us were allowed to have Brunel, because of course Brunel would have been. So we're actually competing to have the second best civil engineer of all time. So massive historic associations with Brunel. The bridge is incredible. I know it's so boring and cliche, the Clifton Suspension Bridge, but when you stand on the Clifton Suspension Bridge, it's actually quite an amazing feeling. And it's the night my last night at university, me and my friends took loads of booze up the Phillipson Suspension Bridge and sat in it till we watched the sunrise.
Oh, shame. Oh.
So, history piece was there. So a lot going on. It's a good place.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. And you know what? We can report to our listeners next week.
Exactly. I can't wait.
All right. Well, have a good few days.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, bye.
See you on Saturday. Bye.
Thanks, Erica. I'm sure Ethel is absolutely on the edge of her seat to find out about how Mini broke to Bristol. But back to this G-Unio. Here we have Matthew Seligman. Hello, Matthew. Approach the mic.
Approached. Hello.
Hello. So you're going to tell us who you think you are. You've got a German name.
I do. Yes.
Explain.
Well, my family originally came from the area around Frankfurt.
Which bit of them?
The Seligman bit of them.
Your father?
My father's family,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Frankfurt in the 19th century, prior to unification, was a imperial free city, one of those little bits on the map that is independent in the sort of 38 independent states. And it was just on the wrong side of the war between Prussia and Austria. It sided with Austria, Austria lost, and Bismarck hated Frankfurt. He spent a very unhappy time there as an ambassador. He thought it was far too liberal and it was filled with lots of people who weren't suitably Prussian. So he not only annexed it, but he made them pay fantastic amounts of money and treated them really badly. And lots of people who didn't like the Prussians left Frankfurt after 1866, including my great-great-grandfather. I'm trying to work it out now. Great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather.
Okay, so what was he? Was he one of the ones being taxed in an inconvenient manner? Was he like
I think he just hated
Gerard
Russians.
Depardieu?
No, he didn't go off to darkest Russia. He decided to come to London.
So he thought London was the bastion of freedom, and compared to this awful Prussian.
To be honest, I think it just wasn't Prussia, and that was enough. It was somewhere he could go to that Bismarck's arm didn't reach to.
It's quite a big thing to relocate your life.
It probably was, but
Was he a businessman? What was his income? How did he work?
he was quite young at the time. He went off to... It must have been something to do with finance, because he went off to the City of London and eventually founded a company there that did something with... with futures or options or something I don't quite understand. And yes, it went from there. But apparently, this could be family apocrypha, he spent the next 40 years telling everyone in London just how horrible the Prussians were, really, really boring them to death with this continuous whine about how dreadful these people were. With the result that when 1914 rolled along and people with German names were not quite so popular, no one was under any illusion about just how much he hated.
I was going to ask, because you didn't change your name, or the name didn't get changed during either of the wars.
No, it didn't get anglicised either, two N's still at the end.
And did they, was there any consequence for this? Was there, did people, he was well known as a hater of, someone who loathes Prussia, but did that ricochet around you or your father, people who didn't quite...
No, by the time we get to the Second War, we're a couple of generations further down, and there really is no German association anymore other than the name, but you trace it backwards.
But that was enough, in many instances.
Yeah, there was the barrier of about 2 more passports along the way.
Okay.
That insulated. My father served in the Second World War. He was in the Royal Armoured Corps, until his tank got hit in Italy.
And what happened then?
We invalided back.
Okay.
He did a series of not particularly great campaigns. There was Norway, which was a fiasco. He spoke French, so he went to Norway because he could help translate between the two. And then
in the tank regiment?
No, it was just taken out. He spoke French, so they took him out and said, translate. We need someone to help us translate with the French, so he did that. Norway was a fiasco, obviously. Then came... Well, it meant he avoided Dunkirk. So
which was a good thing, yeah.
Then came back to Britain to just be one of those people in case the Germans landed. What they were going to do with no guns or anything else was not clear, but did that for a couple of years. Then it was North Africa and Italy.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it was a sort of underwhelming war.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, some of it was. I suppose being hit in a tank by a German.
No, I mean
shell
that's not underwhelming.
Um,
So you grew up with an invalid father, did he?
no, he was fine by the time I arrived on the scene.
Okay.
But he wasn't. He was no longer fit to serve.
Yeah.
So.
This is one of the things that fascinates me about the interwar period, and it's probably true for the period after the Second World War too, but that's not my period, you know. A historian's great out, which is that the City of London was populated by disabled men running lifts and, you know, sort of doing low-level jobs in department stores and, you know, working the offices of cinemas, and the kind of landscape was populated by the legacies of the war in a way that we kind of can't appreciate.
That's possible. My father had no interest in the City of London at all, so I did work there for
not the city as in the city, but the city as in the urban space.
You mean Greater London metropolitan area?
Yeah, cities, urban history, that's where we are. So do you think this influenced your interest in history, because you work on German Anglo-naval relations in the First World War?
It could well have done.
You haven't reflected upon this?
No, I have, but I have never come to a real conclusion, because I suppose if I was absolutely tracing family history back, I'd probably either be interested in tanks, which I'm not especially, or sort of provincial relations in Germany in the 19th century, sort of particularism and how the various German states interacted with each other, and well, vaguely interested in that, but.
You did put, I must say, Matt, when we were walking here, there was a book on the recycle bin, which is titled People at War 1914 to 1919, and Matthew was horrified that this might be being chucked out. So he's rescued it. You can borrow this in the library, probably next week. And so that's your father's side of the family. What about your mother's?
She was born in Vienna. And had to leave fairly quickly in 38, 39, I can't remember which. Came to Britain via Belgium, I think.
In the kinder transport? No?
No, she got out with her brother and mother. Her father wasn't allowed to leave. Other relatives went to America because they had relatives there. But it was all very complicated. The Nazis oscillated between trying to kick people out and trying to make it as difficult as possible. And one way to do that was to split families.
Right.
The theory being that you then burden the country that is taking the refugees, making it even more difficult in the future. But I mean, one of my relatives who I met about 15 years ago, his family got out because they were filming the Austrian-Swiss border at the time for a newsreel to show just how nice they were about letting people go. And they needed people for the film reel, so they were just...
Oh, hilarious. He was an extra.
Yeah. It was a good way out, but it was,
Totally.
Bit of propaganda. We need someone to
look how nice
push
we are.
out. So along they went out that way. So there were all kinds of weird routes to escape. But, my grandfather didn't make it out. So...
Okay, so is this a kind of story that has been told by your mother?
Occasionally. She doesn't talk about it a great deal.
Yeah.
Some parts of it come out, and when you meet people for the first time, they're like, "Yeah, we got out because." Okay.
So it's a story that she's had to tell, obviously, and that you've had to tell.
Yeah, it's that part of the sort of probably family mythology. It's probably added layers of meaning over the years. But I mean, some parts of it are documented, other parts of it are memories. Make of that.
Oh, we are very interested in memory here at History Pitch. But I'm kind of interested in how people respond when you tell them this story. With a bit of awkwardness? Do they you must, as kind of a case study?
Depends who you're telling it to. The reception can vary depending upon age and location. If I tell the story in Germany, it gets a different response.
Right.
If I tell it in
What response does it get in Germany?
Again, it depends on age, but it can be awkwardness, depending on the age group.
As in the older, the more awkward.
Yeah. The younger, it's distant memory. It might as well be the Hohenstaffens and medieval period, but for those who have memories of living through it or memories of the immediate aftermath, they can evoke different responses. I mean, the Germans have their own ways of dealing with these things, and some of them contextualize it, and some of them, want to historicize it, and others want to forget it. So depending,
or even reify it, make it this. Alison came and talked about Merkel commemorating. What were we commemorating? Something. The Kristallnacht. I can't remember what. Anyone?
The Holocaust, maybe?
There's something about the Holocaust, and we know you have to go, Matthew. It's all right. And we were talking about how is the Holocaust the foundation for Europe? Could Europe exist without this foundation event? Oh, nothing, of course.
Okay.
But
good history.
There's a very good iPhone application where you kill Nazis. That was the conclusion.
Oh, okay.
Escape from Auschwitz.
Escape from Auschwitz. So there you are. You've just got a characteristic piece of History Pitch folklore here, where we move from some actually quite good history to an iPhone app in the space of 5 seconds.
There's always mouse as well, if you want to talk about Auschwitz.
Well, this is this cartoon. Is this right? I haven't actually read this.
Yeah, the Nazis are cats, and the mice are the inmates, I suppose, if you want to call them that. It again historicizes it in a different way.
Yeah. Have you read this, Josie?
Yep.
Yeah, you might have to.
I would recommend it.
Have to approach the mic and tell Ethel.
Yeah, it's quite good. It's not really like a comic in the usual sense. It's more like a graphic novel. It's very good.
Okay, Mouse, and that's what it's called.
Yeah, with German spelling.
MAUS.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. I think you have to go and do something official now.
Afraid so. Yes.
Yeah, but it was.
Having me on?
Oh, it's a delight. You can listen to yourself again on a podcast, History Pitch podcast on
Absolutely.
YouTube.
I will be one of the many downloads.
They are. You and Ethel. Our one viewer is called Ethel. Okay, thank you very much.
Cheerio.
So stepping out of the chair is Matthew, and stepping into the chair is Claire. Now Claire is she's hobbling. Oh, you don't have to sit down if it hurts
It's
too
fine.
much. Claire has an injury. And how did you get this injury?
Well, I was skiing all last week, but I didn't actually get the injury from skiing. Someone dropped me and I...
Oh!
Someone was jealous and
What?
hit you in the face.
Yeah.
What happened? How did they drop you? Why were they carrying
We
you?
were having a race, and they tripped and dropped me on gravel.
And the race involved them carrying you?
Yeah, piggyback race.
Okay. Naturally. Yeah, standard in the snow activity. I'm kind of interested in the snow and people who ski because I hate skiing and I'm quite bad at it. I've only done it a few times and I think it's because I'm massively risk averse. What's your relationship to risk?
Love a bit of risk.
You love a bit.
You've got to have a bit of risk or you're not living life on the edge, are you?
That's right.
There you go.
There's nothing wrong with not living life on the edge.
It's a room full of historians. They spend their lives.
Speak for yourself.
Don't
say YOLO, please.
They're historians.
There's nothing wrong with taking a risk in small packages.
Skiing is not risky.
You ski, Artemis.
Yes, I do ski. It's not risky.
It's risky if you're not very good, and I wasn't very good.
You can always go slow, break a bit.
Not if you can't stop, which is my issue.
Precisely.
Yeah, but she went skiing and she came back in one piece, and then she had this race and she hurt herself. Which one is more dangerous now? Child play or skiing?
Well, we don't know how they were linked yet, do we?
No.
No, we don't know whether you slipped on this piece of ice or your bearer did. Oh, that was fascinating. And you think it's going to get better?
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I've just applied for a parachuting course in summer, so...
As we said, a healthy relationship to risk.
You've got to have a bit. If you don't take risks, nothing gets done.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that fascinating potential factoid? You're doing a parachuting course. This is involving jumping out of a plane by yourself.
Yeah. I'm part of something called the University of London Air Squadron, and they just throw loads of courses at us for free, so I've just signed up to as much as I can. Really.
Okay, so you're jumping out of a plane. What else are you doing?
Trying to get on a rock climbing course,
That's fine. I can do rock climbing. You've got a rope. I can't. I'm not very good at it, but I'm happy in a kind of philosophical sense to kind of because everything's under my control. If I let go, I die. That's it. Or I dangle. So, okay, you're rock climbing, you're parachuting.
I'm going to stick with those two because I've just applied for a job at summer, but there's loads more. You can do kayaking, mountaineering, anything you want, really.
And why is kayaking, rock climbing and mountaineering relevant to Air Squadron?
You know, leadership training.
Okay. And, you know,
and fun. And
it's
free.
My God, join the British Army, Air Force. What are you? Air Force. Oh, good. I hope we get to hear about that. Thank you very much. So let us move swiftly now along to see what our LGBT history segment of the week is going to tell us.
Hello, and it's time for the third segment of LGBT History Month. And this time we're doing the 1800s through to 1950. I'm here with Emma once again, and now we're going to start with the timeline.
We're starting?
Yeah, you can start.
1869, the term homosexuality appears in print for the first time in the German-Hungarian pamphlet written by Karl Maria Kerpenny even.
In 1870, Fanny and Stella, aka Frederick Park and Ernest Bolton, were arrested for cross-dressing, and they were then charged with homosexuality and conspiracy. Interestingly, a book about this was just recently published, and it's been giving a lot of very good reviews.
1889, the Cleveland Street scandal erupts in England.
1894, biologist and pioneer of human sexuality Alfred Kinsey is born on 23rd June.
1895, trial of Oscar Wilde results in his being prosecuted under the Criminal Law Amendment Act for gross indecency. He's sentenced to 2 years hard labour in prison and then exiled.
And we'll hear more about him later. 1919, different from the others, one of the first explicitly gay films is released, and Magnus Hirschfeld has a cameo in the film and partially funded its production.
1921, in England, an attempt to make lesbianism, as well as preying on young women by both genders, illegal for the first time in Britain's history, does not pass in the House of Lords.
But it does pass in the House of Commons. In 1926, the New York Times is the first major publication to use the word homosexuality.
1829, The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall, the best book, is published in the UK and later in the United States. It sparks great legal controversy and brings up the topic of homosexuality to public conversation.
1931, Mädchen in Uniform, one of the first explicitly lesbian films and the first pro-lesbian film, is released.
1938, the word gay is used for the first time in reference to homosexuality.
1945, upon the liberation of Nazi concentration camps by the Allied forces, those interned for homosexuality are not freed, but required to serve out the full term of their sentences under paragraph 175, which was the German law that forbade homosexuality. So yeah, they remained in camps even after. It was really ridiculous, actually.
Bad luck.
Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a very key person during this time, or a couple of very key people. First, Radcliffe Hall.
Yeah.
She's quite famous, I'd say. She wrote The Well of Loneliness, as you mentioned earlier, and she wrote a few other books as well, but this is her most famous book, and it's
the one we got all the fan mail.
Yeah, it's 500 pages long, and it got censored but reprinted from abroad, and it got huge amounts of interest, really. It's considered like the obligatory lesbian read. If you are a lesbian, you should read it, really. But that used to be the case. Not so much now. It's not really relevant as much anymore.
It's really not.
And it is very, very boring in my opinion.
I would second that.
Yeah. So Radcliffe Hall was kind of an interesting character. She wrote this book quite late in her life, really. She was in her I think 30s or something. Oh, actually, possibly even older, maybe 40s or 50s. And she had numerous affairs, and she'd been brought up very rich, and she'd lived a very decadent life. So the character in the book is very similar, but not quite the same. But you get the idea of this rich aristocrat democratic lesbian who doesn't identify as a lesbian because it doesn't really exist yet. But the idea is that to be able to be a homosexual in this time, you have to be very wealthy and be able to do your own thing. And this is what Radcliffe does. And she goes on holiday all the time, and they breed really adorable dogs. And she just has a great, grand old time, just being really gay everywhere. And she writes this book, and then she gets caught in the public eye and perceived as the first sort of modern idea of lesbian. And it all gets kind of tragic, really, because she spends a few months in England, I think, and then they end up leaving for France because it's just a bit much. And they try and avoid the sort of spotlight that the Well of Loneliness caused. And I say they because Una Troubridge was there. And it was a bit dramatic, really. Do you have anything to say?
No, not really.
Okay, so
we might want to mention that the scene in Paris was a little bit better for lesbians.
The
homosexualists
homosexuals in France, particularly in Paris, was a lot better than it was in England and even in London. It was a very much more accepting atmosphere, and you can see that in The Well of Loneliness as well as Radcliffe Hall experienced that a little bit herself. She met Natalie Barney, and it's like Paris had this fantastic gay scene already existing in the interwar period. So it's very different from what was experienced throughout most of the Western world, really.
Attracted a lot of artist types as well.
Yeah, it certainly did. And speaking of artist types, Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde. So, said earlier that he was set on trial for indecency. That indecency being a lot of affairs with a lot of young men. Again, he was born into like a decadent, rich lifestyle, and he used his wealth and his position to hire out a lot of young men who were kind of lower class, selling their bodies.
So, probably part of the Cleveland Street scandal.
Yeah. So, a lot of indecent acts and things that were kind of kept secret, because he also had a wife, a long-suffering wife, who a lot of people think he was bisexual, another one, and did enjoy his marriage. He had 2 sons very quickly after one another. So it's thought that it's not like a fake marriage. He met Lord Alfred Douglas in 1891, and they became very good friends, and then they became more than very good friends. And unfortunately, Lord Alfred Douglas's father found out about this and was not happy about it. So he notoriously tried to ward off Oscar Wilde and started some lawsuits against him. Wilde turned that back on him and tried to sue him for libel for calling him a sodomite. Unfortunately, the very good lawyers that Lord Douglas's father had hired had already seeked out a lot of the young men that Wilde had been involved with. So they had a lot of people saying that he had done various bad things to them, or with them, or around them. So he got sentenced to 2 years in a hard labour camp, and then fled to France, where he died broke from the trials and the expenses of that, with a ruined reputation. And he's kind of looked up to in the gay community now, and like pitied a lot, and he's kind of a victim of his own vices. So he deserved it a little bit.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Just a little bit though, because it's not cool to send someone to a labour camp for being gay, but
that was kind of...
He didn't handle himself very well. He kind of treated being in court as a joke. Acted it up a lot, and he kind of got what was coming to him for that.
Yeah. I can't imagine that he expected to get 2 years hard labour. I think he probably thought he was going to be above it, given that with the Cleveland Street
he
scandal,
was born rich and
charged.
he threw that around a lot.
Yeah.
Which didn't go down well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go.
Okay, so now, very quickly, talking about this period, we have several major wars. So you have the First World War and the Second World War.
Yeah.
And then this time, we get, for the first time for an extended period of time, in a very, hundreds of years, that you have large groups of soldiers and sailors hanging out for months and months at a time, even years, just sort of chilling out. And it's in the First World War and the Second World War, you get to see a very increased rise in homosexuals being active about their behaviour in the services. There were very serious worries about lesbians being involved in the women's sort of services, and it was kind of common for men to give each other favours when they were sharing bunks. It was a bit weird. Yeah, it was kind of interesting, really, but it was a good development, I guess, because if you're experiencing that during the Second World War, or the First World War, and you're getting closer, or if you're just witnessing it, and you don't
socialising,
yeah,
okay.
It's a good way of introducing it gradually to everyone else.
Yeah.
Through the wartime experiences and sharing these. So yeah, that's another interesting thing. But that's it for now. Next segment is moving on from the 1950s to present day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Emma and Josie. And we apologise, Ethel, for the slight sort of sense that you're listening to that through the sea, because there is quite a lot of noise going on. Artemis, you have a mic and everything.
I do. Where's my theme song?
We're going to play that in a second,
Okay.
but I want to get a bit. I want you to discuss this thing that you found in the Metro a little bit.
Okay.
There
is a 2-page ad, pages 17 and 18.
Excellent footnoting.
From where they are promising us that they're checking their meat from now on, and they're gonna have fresh chicken, British chicken. Actually, I don't know how they're gonna identify that. I mean, what's the identity of a chicken in this kind of? Do they take a separate citizenship test? Or does the meat taste differently here or in other places? I don't know. But they're promising us that it's going to be pure British, because all of us are. So why wouldn't we want something like that? And their beef is going to be better checked. And I was listening to your talk with Erica the other week. Yeah.
Wow.
No, just at the beginning. And I unfortunately have to disagree with both of you, because if you think of the pressure being put on companies to lower their prices, there's nothing really you can do about not mixing really, really shitty first
you know what you could do, though?
Yeah.
You could mix it with beans.
Write it on the...
You could mix it with beans. Why do, yeah, there's a whole big movement about 50% beef, 50% beans, and that they make perfectly fine burgers.
Very big movement.
There is a small movement.
How many?
There's a campaign. A person.
You and 5 friends.
Yeah, it's got to start somewhere.
This is not going to sustain Lidl and Tesco and all the others.
It might. Beans are cheap.
IKEA used horse meat.
I know.
It's
It's a corrupted supply chain. You know what? That note, I'm about to post it on our Facebook.
It's not corrupted. It makes sense. If you want really low prices, that's what happens. That's how it works. Otherwise, you will have to pay.
I'm prepared to pay.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. I think we should pay more for our food, and I think we should eat less meat.
That is irrelevant.
It's not relevant.
No, it's irrelevant.
If we paid the true cost of what the meat costs to produce, right?
And the labour, of course.
And the labour, of course.
For everything to be healthy.
Then we would be paying more for our meat, which would mean we would eat less of it.
And which creates a different kind of circle, because the workers would be paying more, which means that they could pay more for the food, which would raise the quality. But the thing is that nowadays we just want cheap things. Yeah,
and I think that's bad.
It is.
Oh my God, we agree. We so agree. Shit, we better move on to Dumb Ways to Die before the world ends. But yeah, play.
Set fire to your hair, parts as piranha bait. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die.
Ah, yes, here we are with everyone's favourite segment, Dumb Ways to Die. There was your theme song, Artemis. Now you think so?
I'm very happy.
Now you said that you have some excellent...
I have excellent deaths today. I mean, I was really happy this morning, even more happier than Rose Road.
Dumb ass Rose. Yeah.
So we have July 2011, New York, protesting motorcycle helmet laws. A New York man was participating in a bear noggin protest ride when he was killed via flipping over the handlebars. The motorcycle accident injured the noggin of Mr. Contos, which sounds Greek. I'm hoping it's Italian, or please God, please not Greek. 55, fatally damaging a brain that was unable to determine the physics of the situation. Moreover, he'd do it again if he could, according to his elder brother. He would have wanted it that way. Unfortunately, he's not able to try again because he was so dumb that he died protesting against what killed him, which is really cool. Because that happened to communists too. My second death for today. Where is it? Oh.
You're happy about this one?
I'm so happy about this one. Afraid because it might happen to anyone.
Oh dear.
So Florida man, Sean Montero, which sounds Italian, definitely Italian, not Greek, was stuck in a traffic jam when nature called.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. He got out of his car and jumped
Sean!
over...
It said Sean! Hi Sean! It's nature here.
I do not want to participate. I find it lame, and I'm going to go on.
Okay, press on. So,
No.
he answered the phone. Or did he not?
I don't know what he did with his zippers. I will let you know.
Okay.
So he got out of his car and jumped over a concrete wall to find a more secluded spot, which is I've seen many penises in my day on my way somewhere. So little did the chap know, he was parked on top of a bridge.
Oh!
And he fell 65 feet.
Oh!
So yeah,
it could happen to all of us. You're right.
It could, because police revealed that Mr. Montero, which is Italian, had been drinking at a bar.
Oh, I see.
So he was a bit drunk. So when you're drunk and driving, the problem is not that you're driving while you're drunk. The problem is if nature calls, don't pick up, or have a beer bottle. Look before you jump.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I don't know where do you find these things.
The Darwin Awards.
Oh,
yeah. And
brilliant.
they're actually checked that they're real deaths.
Oh,
because after the Tesco ad, I would like to address Ethel and let her know that I'm doing my best to bring you good British stories. Which are not British, but
they're authentic.
They're broadcasted from Britain.
Yep.
So, there. I'm changing. Thank you.
I think it sounds like that note from Tesco's, which I posted on our Facebook page, sounds a bit like Tesco's is trying to desperately get back together with its ex-lover, who is the people of Britain. Please take me back, is what it said. I'm different. I've changed. Okay, so we're going to talk now to hear from Simon. I think this may be one of Simon and my best episodes yet. We are historicising emotions. So, Simon, come on down.
Simon?
Hello, Tamsin.
We were going to historicise love.
Yes, we were. Are we still going to?
Yeah, we're totally going to do it. I was going to say that love is different in every context. I think that's what I was going to say.
Well, do you still think that?
Yeah, I think I do. I think we can historicise emotion.
Well, I think that's quite interesting, the way you're talking, because it means you're not even sure about how you feel. So how can you be sure about what somebody was feeling in the 19th, 18th centuries?
That's bloody clever. I see what you've done there. But yeah. I totally agree with you. How can we know? What are the apparatuses by which we know the past?
Well, you've got a bit wide there, but that's certainly an interesting point, that lots of people who started work on the history of emotions, so who were looking at, for example, fear in the 19th century Imperial Russian army, ended up having to stop and consider how they were going to actually think about emotions. What was the conceptual machinery?
And what did they decide?
I think people still haven't decided yet. I think it's very, very difficult, and that's my argument against the history of emotions, particularly against historicising love at the moment, is we're not in a position to do it.
But we never will be. There's no kind of, this is a question about the limitations on all history, not just the limitations on the history of emotion.
I think it goes beyond that. There is nothing harder at the moment for a historian to do than the history of emotions.
There's nothing harder to do, did you say?
The history of emotions is harder to do than any other field of history at the moment.
At the moment?
We don't know what's going to come.
Okay, and the history of emotions, it's harder for us to access emotions in the past than it is any other kind of past. I mean, my argument is that the past is equally alien and impossible to reach no matter what we are talking about. And it's just that when we're writing about warfare, we think there's the illusion of similarity, is the illusion of sameness, which actually deflects the essential difference of the past. I mean, these TV historians, of which you and I are aspirant, to which you and I aspire, who kind of emphasise the sameness of the past, how we can relate, how the past is the foundations for the present, how, we can find in it the kind of people who are like us. I think this is actually probably wrong.
Well, I certainly agree with that. I mean, essentially, the basis of the history of emotions is that we have all this potential to feel things. So every single human being in history has had the potential to feel the same things, but we don't. There's this enormous variety, and that variety is explained by social and cultural context. But what I'm arguing about, the extra difficulty of doing this shit emotions, is what are we talking about? Are we talking about language, for instance, when we talk about this shit emotions? How do emotions relate to reason, to rationality? Is it a form of rationality, or is it something distinct? And also, we want to argue against the still commonplace feeling that emotions are kind of hydraulic; they well up.
But this should not be an obstacle to our ability. I mean, what you're saying is the history of emotions requires us to think across some of the disciplinary divisions that we usually segment our historical knowledge with, right? It requires us to use social history, to use cultural history, to use history of ideas, and probably to think about, real economic and political conditions as well. And that's part of its beauty, surely. Surely it's kind of post-cultural turn in that respect.
I think you have to go even further than that. That's the real difficulty. So we're not talking about history, we're talking about the humanities, so anthropology comes into play here, social psychology comes into play here, but then the real difficulty is the life sciences. So all the things to do with the science of the mind come into play here, and that is really hard to do.
It's hard, but it doesn't mean it's an endeavour that is pointless or not worth. In fact, it's the most... Surely it should be... this is what Universitas is about, kind of disciplines coming together to answer a kind of common problem. And it's a place where history has to think about disciplines that can inform it, but it also sees a real role for itself to offer something to the other disciplines. It's a mutual relationship.
I think I'm nuancing my argument again. So I'm not arguing against the history of emotions, even though you gave me that task. What I'm saying is, and people have done this, if you're trying to write the history of love, I think you're running before you can walk. I think it's very much its infancy still. There's still huge arguments about what are we talking about when we talk about the history of emotion. Are we talking about people's real emotions? Are we trying to get into the head of somebody in the 18th century whose son had died? How is he experiencing mourning? Or are we just talking about the kind of the culture of emotions for that period? Like what is expected of somebody who lost their son in the 18th century?
But Simon, aren't these questions so different to kind of faith, writing about faith? We can write about religion, perhaps, and as historians have done for a long time, but accessing what people believe is not that different than accessing what they feel, because what they say they believe is not necessarily a particularly good index to what they do. believe.
I think there's a difference between what somebody feels and what somebody thinks. And that extra level of complication is really difficult conceptually. And you can struggle and struggle and struggle with it. And so that's, I'm saying it is difficult. You shouldn't pretend it's easy.
So you think that historians... Okay, so we've got what people think, what people feel, and what they do. So we're happy kind of with the idea that we can write the history of what people do. We're sort of less happy, but happy enough to write the history of what people think. And we feel very discomforted by writing the history of what people feel.
It goes even more complex than that, because we clearly need to include emotions, because emotions are vital to how people are acting.
Exactly my point. You preempted it. You walked into my trap. Lovely.
I haven't walked into your trap. What I'm saying is, even though we know we need to do the history of emotions, and we know we need to kind of, it has to be something similar to what happened with gender. It starts off being women's history, and then it becomes integrated into everything anyone does. So there's no way that I did this in my last book. You can't not mention gender when writing now. So emotions are going to have to be integrated into all history. Even if you're writing about high politics, you're going to have to bring in emotions. It's just, how do we do that? And so I can understand in the short term people just saying, we're going to shelve that problem until people who are really working on it have got a conceptual framework fast enough.
Well, there you are, listeners. If you want to forge ahead on the frontiers of knowledge, History of Motion is where it's at. You have to be a brave soul, take your own pick and act. That's right, Simon. Simon's going to sit in the back, sit in the cavalcade. He'll bring up the rear with the supplies sort of 10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do what most historians do, just steal when people have got something good.
And on that note, Simon, in place...
Steal and make better. Steal and make better.
Steal and make better, but put a footnote in there. It's been lovely, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And we look forward to talking to you next week. But we are here now with Tavinder.
Hello.
Hello, Tavinder.
I have a history society announcement. On Monday, this coming Monday the... What's the date? The 4th. The 4th. Monday the 4th of March, we're having our AGM, Annual General Meeting, from 2:30 to 4 in LC 214. Please come along and question me on how I've done this year and nominate yourself for a position next year.
Oh, so have you... well, what normally happens in AGM is the outgoing president has already designated who's going to be the incoming president, and the whole democratic process is just a fix.
No.
So who's...
That's not what happens at all.
Who's your preferred candidate?
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay, but it exists.
I don't
That's
have a
an
preferred
admission.
candidate. There isn't.
Oh.
I'm impartial chair.
I see.
Oh, so it's another range of Soviet
No, there are. Don't be me. Artemis has just offered me a bribe.
This is not the TV. No one needed to know that. They cannot see it. And I'm taking it back.
I feel like I have to declare this. Give me the money! Let's move on.
To beard or babe, Tavinder,
Yeah.
what is it?
I've come to the conclusion that substantial facial hair is just awesome.
Okay.
It creates geniuses. That's it. So today it's a beard.
Okay.
And it's a very awesome beard. It's Rabindranath Tagore.
Oh, he is wonderful. Yay.
So cool. He's like Shakespeare and Leonardo da Vinci and all the awesome European artists rolled into one.
Now, Tagore won the Nobel Prize in 1913.
Yeah, he did. He was born in 1861 in Calcutta, under the British Raj, which is now called Kolkata. Anyway, so he was a playwright, a novelist, a poet, a lyricist, music composer of over 2,000 songs, and a painter. He took up painting when he was like 60.
He was a leader in what's called the Bengali Renaissance. Is this
Yes,
right?
his entire family was pretty much founding family of Bengali Renaissance.
Rich.
Very rich. Very, very privileged upbringing. He was sort of tutored in his house till he was about 16, then sent to Britain for his formal schooling in a public school in Brighton, and then sent to UCL to study for law, to become a barrister. But he hated formal schooling. He absolutely shunned it. So then he came back to India without a degree and said, "Dad, this is not what I'm doing." And his dad said, "That's fine, I've got 12 other kids that I can get stuff from." So he was the youngest of 13 children. It's a lot. And his elder brothers and sisters were very supportive of him. So that was great.
Okay. So one of the things he was famous for, is that not right, was the kind of translating the East and the West.
Yes, because a lot of his works were translated into English at the time. His writings were transported to the West, so it was his kind of Indian writing that the West could actually access. So he was the kind of portal to Indian culture for the West.
But more than that, not just was he a kind of lens through which the West understood India, he also was a kind of he's often claimed to be one of the first modernists, isn't he? A kind of refashioning Indian culture in this hybrid sort of forms.
Yeah, changing it, making it more accessible to the common people. His writings were about common Indian life. It wasn't about the top, the aristocracy, about the rich. Even though he came from a rich, privileged family, he spent quite a lot of his life living amongst normal people, and he set up schools, set up a university, set up a ashram, which is sort of like a settlement house, a spiritual hermitage, where he spent a lot of his later life.
So this is quite a big departure from previous Indian cultural traditions, which are a lot around the Gita and around the big myths.
Yeah. I mean, he took quite a lot of his writing is in Bengali Sanskrit, so it's traditional, but then the writing in Bengali is more accessible to people who couldn't understand Sanskrit and didn't necessarily know what the sort of high level of education you needed to understand Sanskrit. They didn't need that with his writing.
Fabulous. I mean, do you have any other great...
Yes, he was knighted by George V in 1915.
Beard meets beard.
Yes, beard meets beard.
Beard off.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. But then he was so cool. He understood social issues that in 1919 he renounced his knighthood in protest of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which David Cameron has recently given a non-apology for.
What did he actually say, David Cameron? We regret very much the blood of...
The usual wish-wash.
Yeah.
The usual pretty much, this was awful, we don't need to apologise for it anymore, because Winston Churchill at the time said it was awful.
Oh, right. I checked out.
CD British.
Of which you're one.
Yeah, self-hating.
Self-hating. That was brilliant.
He was really cool, and then he died in 1941. Oh, he had an interesting relationship with Gandhi.
Yeah, he didn't. They weren't besties, were they?
They weren't. He was the more sensible one. I mean, I don't particularly like Gandhi very much. It's just questionable. Yeah, creepy and questionable, and he doesn't have a beard, so he's not awesome.
I like this way of navigating world history. Do you have facial hair? No. Ben.
Bye-bye.
Ben, approach the microphone.
Hello.
Hello. So lovely to see you.
It's very good to be here.
Now, I heard, am I right in thinking that you've moved your boat?
I have. I've moved to Clapton. Sort of Clapton.
Isn't Clapton...
Springfield Park.
Isn't Clapton known as the Murder Mile?
Something like that, yeah. No, it's Springfield Park is rather nice, and Clapton itself, I don't go there really. Okay. I tend to get the bus up to Finsbury Park. But yeah, it's nicer than Tottenham Hale where I was, which is really in the middle of nowhere. There were no laundrettes or shops or anything that you sort of need. So yeah, I'm glad to have moved.
The life of a boatie. It must be getting a bit better now the weather's.
The weather hasn't noticeably improved.
Okay.
I feel like I'm getting colder, or maybe it's just like my body's going, no, this is just enough. This is just enough chill. But yeah, it's not getting any easier. Right?
No wonder you're going home for next weekend.
I am. It's going to be Mother's Day and my mum's birthday, and a chance to see all the family.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm a very proud uncle.
Are you?
Yeah.
How many? How big? What brand?
My sister's got a nearly 3-year-old.
And what brand?
Girl.
Girl brand.
Of the girl type. Yeah. Thing. Who calls my boat a Ro-Ro, and it's like Uncle Ben, when are we going to see your Ro-Ro? And I'm like, soon.
Ro-Ro. Oh, that's good. Okay. Well, we hope to actually interview your mum.
That would be really good, because she's been a history teacher, as I said last week, for forever now.
Yeah. Oh, let's just say Tiara as well.
Oh, thank you for that.
Tiara.
So I don't get to share with you, like Tesco's quest for authenticity. I don't get to share with you my 100% British social anthropologist.
No, we do. Go now. I just wanted to get Tiara in.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you for that. That's very much appreciated. Thanks, Artemis. So, do you want Edward Evans Pritchard?
Yes. Is that really Edward Evans Pritchard?
Edward Evans Pritchard. Oh. Just to catch you out, or Eep, as I like to call him. Or EP to his friends, apparently.
Right. Logically.
Yeah, Michael Gove, apparently his new history curriculum has been criticised by head teachers for being full of dead white men.
Of which Evans Pritchard is one.
Definitely count as one of those dead white men. I feel like trying to cram as many sort of like early 20th century middle class white men into very liberal podcasts as possible.
These are the people I live with.
I love them.
Dead white men.
Yeah.
What? So tell me about Evans Pritchard.
Well, you wanted a bit of Radcliffe Brown and a bit of structural functionalism, but Radcliffe Brown was really, really boring because he didn't do any field work himself. He was a theory guy.
Yeah, but he did piss off basically everybody in every anthropology department in the world.
Yeah, I know he was terrible and a massive academic snob and a bit of a nightmare, but anthropologists like the people who went out there and did field work.
Okay.
And Evans Pritchard was one of the main field workers of that early structural functionalist period, and he wrote two of the standout bookend kind of texts of British social anthropology. The first of which was Magic, Witchcraft and Oracle Among the Azandi, which he did in Ashanti, which he did in Zadiland in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
In which it was one of the first relativist texts, so it didn't go look at these funny superstitions, aren't they odd? He looked at how witchcraft explained unfortunate events that happened, how it was a way of thinking through bad luck and things going wrong, and then reintegrating them into the social fabric. So that was one of the cool things they did, massively influenced by Durkheim and some of the earlier theorists of religion and magic. And
when did that get published? In the 30s?
He was doing his fieldwork in the 20s, and then on the back of that, he got he got a chair in Sudan, teaching religion,
cartoon.
Magic. And then from there, that was when he got the chance to go and work with the Nua, and then he published a trilogy of books about the Nua, which are really, again, a cornerstone of relativistic work, because he didn't go in and then use his British framework to go, this is and go, right, what's important to British people in our society, marriage, religion, try to fit it into these little boxes, like people like Radcliffe Brown were doing, trying to look at our existing structures and fit what these guys were doing into them. He went in and found out that everything in Nua society was to do with cows. So he said, if you want to understand Nua life, cherchez la vache.
Show me the cow. Wow.
Find the cow.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a really good children's book.
Really.
A Tesco one.
Or a Tesco.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. That's awesome. So it sounds like a Where's Orly book, find the cow. But,
so,
look for the cow.
In what way is he related to Radcliffe Brown? Is he a student of Radcliffe Brown?
He was... no, he wasn't. I think they both were at Oxford, though.
Okay.
So I don't know if they were particularly related, but Radcliffe Brown, when he was doing all of his theoretical stuff, tried to fit lots of the field work coming back into his frameworks and then talk about it. So it was like the Victorian armchair so people like James George Fraser would be sitting in an armchair in Cambridge and waiting for the missionaries and the soldiers to send back their letters, and then going, and writing his anthropology based on that. Radcliffe Brown was a lot like that, but he was just doing it with people who by that stage were calling themselves anthropologists and were out there doing field work. Usually they had another reason to be there. They were colonial officials.
Or missionaries often.
But by this point there was a tradition of social anthropology that they were consciously fitting into. So.
Can we do James Fraser?
We can do Fraser. The interesting thing about Fraser, I think that there should be a Beard or Babe on Mrs. Fraser, who actually was the power behind the throne.
Oh, really? I didn't know this.
Yeah, if at all possible, because, she ran his academic career. As far as I can see from reading about him, he was quite a scatterbrained academic and just a pipe-smoking guy in a chair, and then she got lots of his academic appointments, did all of his correspondences.
Gosh, isn't that pretty? And is now officially sort of recognised for these?
I don't know. This is just from conversations you have with academics who've looked back at the early days and gone, "Wow, crikey, this is."
Can you give our listeners a brief account of the Golden Bell?
Not really, because it's as long as a bookshelf. I tried to read an abridged version of it once, and I disliked it massively. And because within the first couple of chapters, he calls magic primitive superstition. He talks about how magic is all about these misguided principles of sympathy and. What's the other one? So basically, that if something that's been part of something then can have effect on it afterwards, or something that looks like something can then have effect on it afterwards. So he was saying that, this is just a misguided fault of the primitive brain, nothing to do with reality. Later, people who've gone and looked back at magic, including Evans Pritchard, say no, actually, this is to do with society. This is to do with structure, and then Levi-Strauss comes on and takes it one step further and says, actually, the sorcerer has a lot of psychosomatic power. Actually, if somebody in a position of authority says you're healed or you're cursed, that can actually have a general efficacious an efficacious effect in real life.
But we have to. James Fraser is important because he takes magic seriously.
He does, and he's a great collector and comparer of myths. And in fact, he's doing something which was quite new at that point, which is taking myths and legends from different cultures and not just like a classicist studying them in situ, but he was comparing them and seeing where trends fit together, and looking at this myth of like the sacrificial king, especially as something that runs through all kinds of mythologies and all kinds of cultures. So putting culture in such a place where you can compare between one thing and another, a lot like Pitt Rivers was doing with his collections. He wasn't just saying, this is my shelf of stuff from Polynesia. He was saying, okay, let's look at things cross-culturally. I mean, these guys were still thinking evolutionarily. They were still thinking this is primitive stuff, and then we've moved on from there, which was obviously massively racist. But at least they were pulling stuff up from different cultures, comparing it and contrasting it. Yeah. So it's important.
Thank you very much. And that was wonderful. If you want to learn more about Pitt Rivers, listen to Melbourne Brags in our time today. Yeah. Now, Jagvir, thank you, Ben.
No problem.
Ben, Jagvir, you've been here for 40 minutes. I'd like you to 20, half an hour. I would like your voice to be, recorded.
Fine. So, anything in particular?
Well, normally you have a question for me.
Oh, yes. Oh, first I got to point out, Tavinder with Tagore forgot to add that he wrote the national anthems for Bangladesh and India.
That's right. I forgot in all my excitement. Well, the songs he composed in part of his 2,000 odd songs, he wrote the national anthems. He didn't write them as national anthems. They were later taken on in 1947 and then 1971. So respectively for India and Bangladesh.
Like the Phantom of the Opera is going to be in like 20 years in this country.
Oh my god, yeah.
He is the old Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's just all those great European people rolled into one.
And just for future reference, for India it's Jana Mana Gana, for Bangladesh it's Amar Shona Bangla.
Would you like to give us a rendition?
No, I don't know the words.
Okay.
But a question, I'm going to give you a choice, because I said social history and I could think of relatively two questions. The first one, the course of women's rights to feminism from, Emmeline Pankhurst to Caroline Duffy. How did that happen? I'll explain later. And then also the more frightening one of, what was life like at uni without computers?
It's 10 minutes past 12, and you're going for those two questions.
I want to know the second one.
If you can condense those to a minute, that would be great.
I want to know the second one.
Well, the answer to the first question is because women fought for it. The answer to the second is I had computers at university. We just didn't have email.
Did you? The ENIAC? Like the room, full room.
Oh, right. No, I
had into knowledge.
Yeah, you walked into it. Yeah, exactly. And put a piece of paper in and it kind of... No, I had a desktop and it had Microsoft Word 1 on it or something. And in fact, it's quite tragic. Well, this isn't that tragic, but I can't actually access any of my university essays because it doesn't convert. So this is a lesson for archivists. But we didn't have email. So what we did was we got post Or we had to rock up to lectures to find information out. Shock, horror.
So what happened if you needed to miss a lecture? Would you send a letter to your professor saying, "Dear professor, I will have to miss this class. Just skip this class."
Or you'd have to go and talk to them afterwards, after the one before.
Can we send you letters?
You can totally send me letters. And yet we had to do things like take a book with us wherever we went, because if someone was late, you didn't just get a text message. You had to stand there waiting for 15 minutes. Remember that? You couldn't cancel at the last minute. Say, look, there's just silence, incomprehension dawning on the faces of these people. Yes, I grew up in the Ark. Or we would go and just hang out in the coffee shop, and then people would come, and it would just be a thing.
Did you use telephone booths?
Yes.
Oh my God.
In fact, in the hostel that I stayed in, it was actually a seminary, but that's the stage of my life we can pass over. There was 2 phone booths on the floor for all the, I don't know, it was about 20 people that lived on the floor. And your friends would just call these phone booths, right? You had to put 20p in to pay for the phone calls. And they'd just call the phone booths, and anyone on the floor would answer it, right? And then they'd have to come along and knock on your door, and if you weren't in, they'd leave a note. And that's how it works. There was no, like, one of 20 people could have answered the phone. It was, and often you missed messages, and it was beautiful. And that's the end of that. I can't believe I've become a historical relic. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have run over time, but it has been a joy and a pleasure. We hope to welcome you back, you and Ethel, next week. But in the meantime, we're going to go out to our theme song.